One of my favorite parts of this show is hearing from people all around the world who have tuned in. Today's guest is streaming from Malaysia, and I'm glad she listened to our show. She has incredible stories of bootstrapping, firsthand stories of surviving a decade in business, launching new ventures as well, and so much more. And with that, welcome to That Entrepreneur Show, where you get to hear from founders around the world as they share the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. My name is Vincent A. Lancy, and I am your host. But before I bring on today's amazing guest, it is rapid fire time. Quick questions and quick answers, starting with, which platform do you stream your podcast through?
Apple, mostly.
I'm Apple as well. Where do you typically listen to your podcasts?
So I typically listen usually, well, if it's not a pandemic, while I'm having a walk. But yeah.
So pandemic, you mentioned pandemic in Malaysia. Are you back under COVID lockdown as we're producing this episode mid-August?
That's right. It's been on a lockdown since March of this year. So basically that's why I'm kind of like trying to think, what do I answer for this one?
Hey, well, I'm glad we're able to make some time, and I'm hopeful for everyone that we are pushing through this together.
Yeah.
But now I'd like to know, do you listen to your podcast since we're under COVID now, before you work, after you work, while you work?
Yeah. So if I'm having a walk, it's always through some form of an earphone or headphones. But if I'm only at home, it's mostly through the computer. So I'll just be listening on the computer.
Thank you for sharing it. For everyone listening on, I'd love to hear how you podcast too. Email me info@vincentalancy.com to be featured on a show. But if it is your first time joining us, whether you're looking to start or scale your business, this is the show for you, because you never know which motivational journey will inspire you most. As I mentioned, today's guest has a powerful story to share. She is the co-founder and CEO of both Piktochart and Piktostory. They are visual storytelling tools and each serve different needs. Piktochart is primarily used for visuals and infographics, while Piktostory is used more for videos. She has built this business with her husband, which I think is amazing, for over 10 years now. And they have tons of stories to share, as you can imagine, from that time period. Some areas she's going to focus on: why it is possible to build a profitable and purposeful people-first organization, how to bootstrap, and why they went on a 4-day work week, if she has any regrets about that, and so much more. So allow me to now bring her on to share this amazing journey. Hi, Ching Goh. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me in the show.
My pleasure. Would you mind giving our audience a little preview into who you are, all things you, before we dive into business talk?
Sure. So I actually co-founded Piktochart with my husband, like you said, 10 years ago. We started out with just an idea for an infographic maker, but we became more and more of a storytelling tool today. We also have a new product now. We launched this earlier this year, which you briefly mentioned about video. And we believe that video is going to be a real great, big part of us. It's going to be huge as a storytelling medium really soon. And we're very excited to be part of that. Apart from business, my husband and I, we also, he's Italian. And I'm obviously living here in Malaysia. We're here in Malaysia most of the time. We used to travel in between of the two continents very often. We have a daughter together as well, so I'm also a mom. And I think that's a short intro.
That must be great to go back and forth. I've only been to Italy once, but I had a great time. Did everything from Rome to Turin, Venice, you name it. But now let's actually jump into business talk. There's a lot of reasons why people become entrepreneurs. Let's hear what led you into that journey.
Yeah, we kind of have had multiple starts. None of it was planned. It was almost like organic. So what happened was that I was in corporate and I was working in corporate for a while, and I suffered from a massive burnout, and I was in my early 20s. So what happened was I actually had to do a surgery. Most people took 2 weeks to recover, and I took 3 months. I was bedridden for 3 months in my early 20s, and this made me think and reevaluate everything that I knew about life itself. So it was a very existential question. I was like, do I even have a purpose? What do I really love doing? Like, who am I? All that kind of questions. And Although we didn't have a business idea necessarily, what my husband and I both knew was that we wanted to create a purposeful workplace, somewhere where it was people first, where people wouldn't feel, Monday blues and all that kind of stuff. And not to anyone's surprise, we started out with web design consulting. So basically, we built websites for people, and this was more than 10 years ago, right? You don't have like
Yeah.
cool tools like all the Squarespace, Webflow, etc. You don't have them, so that's quite different. And we needed to get our own clients. So I discovered inbound marketing. At the time, HubSpot was just growing. It was their like first or second year as well. Learned a lot about content marketing and everything. And I was like, this thing is going to be more visual. Like if people are going to create more blogs, they're going to need more visuals to go together with their blogs. And that could come in the form of infographics or blog graphics. And so I pitched the idea to my husband, and the rest was kind of history for Piktochart. Piktostory has a slightly different story. We built this while Piktochart became quite mature, and we were looking for a different medium for people to tell stories. And we felt that video had a very, and you know this because you're in this like business basically. It has a very authentic, and stories just carry off very differently compared to like visuals. Like it carries emotions, it's packed with a punch. The idea was actually pitched by a developer and then afterwards by a product designer. So it didn't even come from us, but yeah.
You mentioned a lot of great points there, transitioning with the times, how video is even more popular. I can agree with you. Right now, as we record, we are on a Zoom call. Of course, would love to produce video at one point, but as a solopreneur for all these years, you prioritize things. And I think it's more important to get the message out there. Great conversations just like this. So thank you for sharing the history. But since you embarked on this entrepreneurial journey, what are two of the hardest parts of being an entrepreneur, in your opinion?
Yeah, I felt that the first one for an entrepreneur, I probably have gotten slightly better at this over time, is swallowing the humble pill. So taking too long to realize that you're wrong, and you're like, no, I'm still right, and you keep going on. So you don't know how to cut losses, and you don't know when to say stop. And entrepreneurs often, just really think they're right. Very hard, I think, for most people to say, hey, I've made a mistake, let's make a U-turn. Because think about it, like we all need to be convincing our stakeholders, our employees about something that was right, and then suddenly, it's turned wrong. So for me, that's the first thing. The second one would probably be just not knowing what you don't know. I resonate with this a lot more, even now, today, after 10 years. I feel that as an entrepreneur, I had to learn everything from what does culture even mean? What are these SaaS financials? What strategy? How do you grow a company? How do you retain the world's best talent and remain bootstrap at the same time? How do you remain sane? And an entrepreneur doesn't have all of these answers. I think I've personally tried by reading, getting a coach, networking, but to be honest, I felt like I learned most of my lessons by doing it and failing at it. So that's hard. I think that constant failing, going up and down, that fluctuation in energy and mood and all that really it takes a toll on the person. So that's hard.
Extremely well said all the way around. No one ever wants to be told they're wrong, but in entrepreneurship, that is just that. You fail, quote unquote, and then you fix what you didn't do well and you keep trying it again and again and again. There is no textbook for entrepreneurship, although I am big fan of education and reading and coaching, but sometimes you have to deal with it in the real world to understand it. And I think that applies to a lot of things. But if you take anything away from that answer, everyone go after it and try it. If it doesn't work out, so what? At least you started. It's a lot easier the second time than the first time. Once you get going, things can change. But out of this whole experience over entrepreneurship, decade plus, what is one of your greatest lessons learned now that we're on this topic?
Yeah, I wish that I, stopped hesitating, and I was bolder to make certain decisions. I had a lot of self-doubt, especially in the earlier years of my entrepreneurship. I was like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. I should be listening to that person. But honestly, the company just needs a leader to steer, the direction. And I wished I didn't have to take in all of those opinions and just go for it.
It's tough to not give in to those opinions. It's tough to, at first, at least, when your confidence isn't there. Then once you start building and understanding that not everything is going to work out, not everything can work out, it's not possible. I even look at this baseball analogy where in baseball, You're a Hall of Fame hitter if you hit 300. That means you fail 70% of the time. I mean, 70% of the time you do not get a hit. It says a
Mhm.
lot. If you're willing to put in the work and grind it out, it will work out at the end of the day. I'm a believer in that. I'm nowhere where I want to be, but I have seen progression go and go and go. And now we're on book 4, the 4 shows. It's a long way from just 1 year ago. And that's how I look at it. But let's look a little deeper here. Let our audience learn a little more about you. If you could have a conversation with any entrepreneur, who are you choosing?
If it has to be an entrepreneur, probably Natalie Nagel. So she's the co-founder of Wildbit.
Okay.
They found, okay, again, it's a husband and wife team. They found successful companies together. They're in it for 20 years, so twice as long as I am. They're very people first, and I also felt that they defended a very tough competitive niche, and they kind of did all of this like in the span of 20 years together. So they're like kind of a role model to us.
I love it. As a role model, you may have had a conversation or reached out to have a cold conversation. Have you met them?
No, I haven't, but we know of each other's existence because we're part of their whole like people first network and everything. And her team is more in contact with me than I am with with them. But it's yeah, I know it's not like one day, and if I ever made it to the US again after all of this settles down, I would probably make it an effort to go and like have a conversation with them.
Well, I think the first step is going to be to tag her in this podcast when it launches. So please do
Yeah.
that. But let's delve deeper. Where is this meeting going to go down? If you could pick the spot, where is it going to happen? Anywhere in the world?
Oh man, I have no idea. I might like they're very outdoorsy people, and I have not actually. I've been to the States multiple times, and it's always been for work and business. I would love to go somewhere, like in Colorado or something, somewhere where the outdoors super beautiful, or like a lake or something. So, yeah, would have chosen one of those like national parks or something to actually meet.
I love that. I'm looking to go to some national parks too and travel. Right
Yeah.
now we're in summer and there's a lot going on in America because we were locked down for a while. I'm in Florida where thankfully somehow we never really had much as far as lockdown. Our restaurants were open 5 weeks after 2020. But
Yeah.
that's the crazy world we live in. Every town is like a different country at this point because there's different rules. But let's look into the future here. What's next for all of your entrepreneurial endeavors?
Yeah, so we've kind of in the past year until now been building like 2 new products. So the beta editor for Piktochart is up for pro users to test it out right now. And that's kind of crazy because we've had that same product for like the past almost 10 years, and now we're about to make a change.
I
So
like
what's
that.
changing is that we're making it a more modern experience, but that's not it. It's also changing its value proposition. We started off as a very templates intensive type of like infographic maker, but we wanted to slowly reposition ourselves more in storytelling. So you're going to see a lot more features and values
I
coming
like
up
that.
within storytelling itself. So that's super exciting, but scary because we're making a change after such a long time. The second one is obviously Piktostory. So that's the whole all-in-one, really easy video content creation tool. You mentioned earlier that you really believe in videos but don't have the time for that. So it's precisely for people like that we're trying to like build all of these products for. So
You have to keep me posted so I can give it a try and hopefully
totally.
spread some word for you because it is tough to prioritize that and you're filling a need.
Yeah.
Everyone listening out there, it's another great lesson she's teaching you. If there's a need for something, attack it because there's going to be a want if there's a need. Thank you for sharing all these ambitious goals. And now we're going to look into the spotlight story. If it's your first time joining us, I share the story of another entrepreneur to inspire you, the listener, from a new lens. And as we have an all-star entrepreneur from Malaysia on the show this week, we will now listen to another journey in Dadak Seri Hazmiza office. More commonly known as Dr. Vida, I learned she is one of the most successful businesswomen in Malaysia. She has her own empire of health and cosmetic business, Vida Beauty, and its famous product, Hu Patu. I admire this story because of how much she has gone through and she never gave up. She lost her father at the young age of 8. She had to mourn for her 2 children that died in a fire incident in August 2013. She also, at the time this article was written, was going through a divorce. It's a lot of roadblocks, but losing her father young led her to find herself being independent and learning she could support herself by running a business. So she wanted her own one, and she made it happen. As a student, she learned to make money selling pre-packed meals to friends. But like many of you listening on, she went through multiple high and low points. Don't give up. This includes taking on a 100,000 RM loan, or Malaysian ringgits, to open up a salon. It was only after 12 years, that's 12, into her teaching career, she decided to switch jobs and working at the National Vocational Training Council. But eventually, Vita Beauty did get incepted and earned a 1 million Malaysian ringgits grant from the government to help her develop her business. Look at this timeline, everyone. Sometimes it's not quick, but it will be worth it. She battled more adversity when they were on the verge of closing down, when she invested half the capital into advertising, but it did not work. This all changed when she finally promoted her products on the RTM Kelantan FM radio station. Since then, as you can guess, she's been more cautious about how she markets her product and uses herself frequently as a brand ambassador. What do you like best about this story?
She had in this particular story, it's just kind of crazy. Like you said, all the things that she's been through and she's pushed through, and now she's hyper successful. I saw on Instagram she has over 2 million followers, and that's crazy. It's got a niche and she definitely owns it very well.
Great analysis there. This whole episode's been amazing. Thank you so much. I know I thanked you for the lessons learned as they came up, but I have to thank you again. Everything you said was authentic, and I appreciate that. Again, I appreciate you spreading some love on the show all the way out in Malaysia. And I am going to link you up with a friend and guest on all of my series, Josh Grenowitz. Storytelling is his whole business. He is here in America, and I think, hey, there may be a potential collab there for you both. So why not? But I would now like to ask you for your last word.
Yeah, for me, it's always been about learning how to tell a story, especially for an entrepreneur, that can become so invaluable. Like I only learned this towards the later parts of the of 10 years. It's not only for internal communication, convincing, getting buy-in, but for those of us who actually have external stakeholders, whether dealing with customers or investors, super, super important, to get the message out there. So
love that
invest.
message. Well, now we got to ask, how can everybody get in touch with you?
They can get to me via LinkedIn. So Ching Goh, my name, it's there. Just look it up. Or Twitter, AC Goh. That's the two places I'm publicly available.
What about the websites for the companies?
Yeah, sure. So it's piktochart.com, Piktochart. And the other one will be Piktostory, same Piktostory.com.
Thank you for sharing that, everyone. You heard the value in this episode. Check out what she has to offer, no matter what field you're in. Her resource can be extremely valuable to you. And while you're checking her out on her content, be sure to look us up too. We're at That Entrepreneur Show on all social media, except Twitter at Podcasts by Lancey. So you have updates from all of my shows. I'm at Vincent A. Lancey on everything, YouTube, social media, and the website is vincentalancy.com. And it's time for that quote to end the show. And of course, it's from the Tay's Spotlight Entrepreneur. I've gone through failures and losses, but it only made me more determined to work harder for this life and the hereafter. I would not be able to achieve all of these without tenacity. Thanks for listening, and I will see you all next week on That Entrepreneur Show.